Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today, we're going to continue talking about narrative writing. We've talked about effective openings and effective closings in our narrative, and we've also talked about communicating the theme of our narratives. Today, we're going to talk about the events in our narrative and how we can actually draw them out for our reader. Good writers elongate the events in a narrative so that the audience actually feels like they're taking part in the story and they're experiencing that moment as they read it. So, we're going to talk about 5 strategies that you can employ in your writing today to make you better narrative writers. So, for teachers who are teaching this lesson, you can find the link to this lesson and to my creative writing course in the course description. For my students in Myanmar, please do not purchase any of the materials. If you want access to any of the materials associated with this course, please just send me a message in Signal and I will send them to you for free. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment on the video. And now let's get started talking about strategies for developing moments and scenes in our narrative. Okay, so we're going to talk about 5 strategies for focusing on moments in our memoirs. So remember, when we talk about memoirs, memoirs are a type of narrative writing, and memoirs are really a snapshot of a particular period in time. So when we focus on moments, we really want to zero in on events because the memoirs are like a snapshot of a particular experience in our life. A memoir might be a day, it might be a particular morning, or it could even be just an hour of your life. So we see that it's really important to elongate these moments so that our audience has a full understanding of what was happening at that time. So let's talk about these 5 strategies. The first is controlling the pacing, using sensory language, using figurative language like similes or metaphors, using internal monologue, and zooming in on the details. So when we control the pacing, we're actually setting the time where we're controlling how fast or how slow events in our narrative are progressing. When we talk about sensory languages, sensory language, we're talking about language that appeals to the 5 senses. Now, this is what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and what we feel. So you might choose to think about what a character is experiencing in terms of their 5 senses at a particular point in the story. So a great way to do this, if you're a teacher, is to get your students to perhaps at the lunchroom, at recess, in gym class, in art class, to take a moment and observe what's going on around them and make sure that they engage all 5 of their senses and to think about what do they see? What do they hear? What do they smell? What do they taste? What do they feel? And that way they can include those details in their memoirs. If you're writing yourself, a great exercise is just to go out to a coffee shop or go sit in the park and think about what you're experiencing with your 5 senses. And then that can help you when you're writing to think about what your character might be experiencing at a particular point in the story. Similes and metaphors, we're going to talk more about this. I'm going to do a video specifically on figurative language. But similes and metaphors are a great way to add description. And when we add description, we get our audience to visualize or to picture what's happening. That can lengthen the moment in a narrative. So remember, similes use the words like or as to talk about how 2 unlike things are similar. And metaphors don't use the words like or as. They actually say that something is something else. So I've got a couple examples here. The first is that sales meeting was a train wreck. That's a metaphor. And you're telling the audience that it went very poorly. It went more than poorly. It was awful. Uh, she's a wise old owl. That's another metaphor saying someone's very wise, very knowledgeable. or you're my sunshine, basically saying that you're my happiness. The rest of the examples here are similes. He's as cold as ice, he's as blind as a bat, or she's as sweet as sugar. Saying someone's cold as ice, that can mean that they're literally very cold, but usually it means that they're very unfriendly. Another way, and this is really one of my favorite ways to elongate a moment, is internal monologue. When we talk about internal monologue, we talk about a conversation that the character is having with himself or herself. So here I've got some phrases, some questions in bold that the character's not speaking out loud, but they're saying to themselves. And this is a really great way to lengthen the moment. And it also helps your audience to get to know your characters a little bit better. So here, someone's standing at the door of a cafe and going in to meet an old friend that she hasn't seen in years. She's asking herself, what if this is a mistake? What would she even say to him? Did he still remember that night, the last time they'd spoken? She'd said too much back then, hadn't she? So these are all things that this character is thinking while she's waiting to enter this cafe. And finally, another really great strategy is zooming in on details. And we can use this along with figurative language, because when we're talking about these details, we can use similes and metaphors to describe those details. So here, I won't read this whole thing, but I've got two paragraphs where the author does a really great job of zooming in on details. Maria sat in the lobby, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the leather-bound portfolio resting on her lap. So just that first sentence, there's such terrific detail there. So we've got an adverb here, lightly. Her fingers are lightly tracing the edge of not a book, but a leather-bound portfolio. So great description, great detail. I can really picture what's happening at that point in the story. Where is this leather-bound portfolio? It's resting on her lap. And I can see here Maria's waiting to go into a job interview. So she's probably a little bit nervous. So these are all behaviors that help me to visualize what's happening at that moment and how she's feeling. So throughout my course, I give lots of opportunities for the students to engage with mentor texts and to identify examples of how an author elongates certain moments. Okay, and along with that, for our own writing, we've got graphic organizers where we can practice it. We can practice developing moments, and we've got those strategies listed here on the right. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment on my video. And I will be back in our next video where we're going to talk about figurative language in narrative writing.